Ladies and gentlemen, we are indeed very fortunate today in having with us Lt Gen Mohinder Puri, UYSM, PVSM, an alumni of the National Defence Academy and the Indian Military Academy, who went on to command 3rd GR. And thereafter, he held all prestigious appointments, commanded the brigade, and then led 8 Mountain Division into battle in Kargil, covering that subsequently. And apart from that, he has had tenure as the co-commander in Punjab and Rajasthan sector, and thereafter superannuated in 2006, just after having held the post of the Deputy Chief of the Army. He has had a very, very interesting tenure throughout his service, and he is the author of the book. Some of you may have read this, Kargil, Turning the Tide. A very authentic and obviously first-hand account of what really went on in Kargil. We've seen a lot of it. It was streamed into our drawing rooms practically, and we've seen the valiant actions of the young officers. But this is a first-hand account of all what went into Kargil. The details of the book cover a lot of aspects. In fact, he has covered firstly the geopolitical events at that time, which shaped his actions. In fact, it was just after the 1,000 cuts which Zia had talked about, which was being so effective in the 90s. There was no GNK. And in the later part of the 90s, peace was getting restored, and that is the time Musharraf tried to push up the ante. And those are the aspects which are covered in detail in the beginning part of the book, where it works out where and how these events led on to the Kargil War and what actually shaped those events. And thereafter, the battles per se, military historians delight because they cover every aspect of the battle. We've heard of all those names like Tonoling, Tiger Hill, you've heard of all those, Batali. But what went into the capture of those, the events which went in, the preparations which went in, the difficult issues which came up, what were the other factors, not just the battles per se, have been gone into great detail in this book. And then, of course, he has covered all those events which were talked about at that time, the battles for each of those posts. It is not just as if it was Tiger Hill. There was much to it, much more to it than just a feature like a Tonoling or what. But we know them as these, because that is what the media used to highlight. All those aspects have been covered in this, and thereafter he has gone on to talk of the other sector. There was a huge sector. He will be covering those aspects when we have a small tete-a-tete. But the other sector was with another division, which was actually the division which was holding this entire area before he came into the scene. And that part also he has touched upon in the book. So I will, before I get on to this, I will request him to say a few words. And then we will get on to our tete-a-tete, and before that I will be running it through.
Good morning, everyone. I will use the mic. I'd like to thank Tanuja Joshi and Marish Nizam. Thank you, Rubu. She's better known as Rubu to us, and to my family as Rubu to me, Rubu to me. So, thank you very much. It's really a privilege and honor to be here this morning, and despite the traffic which we got on delayed, nevertheless it's been a lovely occasion to come and meet you, and once again thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to attend this wonderful event. Now, Kargil Kargil, before I hand over the mic to Bhanu once again, I think Kargil was a very, very tough operation. It was fought against all odds of terrain, odds of climate, which I covered later on when we start the conversation. But the striking part of that campaign, of the war, was the 527 fatal casualties which we had. Young officers, young soldiers. I mean, it's very sad to even think about the number of casualties which we had. And I think we need to pay homage to these people. Deep in my heart, at least I remember them once a day. Not all 527 of them, it's not possible, but generally one does feel sorry for the lives which have been lost. Young girls were widowed, mothers lost their sons, siblings were lost. So it's something which is very painstaking even today, 25 years after the war. And I always like to pay homage to these martyrs of ours, and it's really because of them that we were able to get the victory which we got, and they are the ones who saved the integrity and the honor of this country. So with that, I think, Manu, we are ready for takeoff.
Thank you, sir. Right, before we get on to our conversation, and thereafter, of course, we'll have an interaction in terms of the rest of you. I'll run a short clip. Actually, this, many of you would have seen, but this encapsulates quite a lot of that, and this is to revive those memories visually. Then, of course, we'll get on to the subject proper. So, getting on to the clip.
The Indian Army was forced to launch Operation Vijay to evict the Pakistan military personnel who had infiltrated into the Indian territory in the areas of Mushko, Ras, Kargil and Hitherto. The Pakistani infiltration was aimed at isolating Ladakh by interdicting the road Srinagar lane. Is vital for the surface maintenance of Zanskar, Ladakh and the Siachen Glacier. For this operation, which commenced early May, the Indian Army built up the requisite force in the area of conflict, and rules of engagement were applied in all areas of interest. The tremendous required stayed by that infantry, along with block support of the other arms and services. The annual government several areas, and the resolute upfront leadership resulted in absolute victory for the Indian Army. With the build-up of men, ammunition, and guns across Zochila, the Indian Army began the painstaking job of assaulting enemy positions which stretched from the Mushko Valley in Ras to the Jubar Hills in the Batalik sector. The ultimate assault by the infantry, which suffered maximum casualties, turned out to be a hot-slogging match, with the infantry soldier braving all odds, fighting under the most adverse conditions of weather, terrain, and strong enemy defenses. Aircraft of the Indian Air Force took on the Pakistani positions, launching more than 550 sorties to blast bunkers perched on the mountain tops. a composite package of a variety of aircraft, and varied weapon systems were professionally orchestrated. As the scale of the Pakistani intrusion became clear, the Indian Navy issued a warning at sea by strategically deploying both the eastern and the western fleets. A major tactical exercise was conducted in the Arabian Sea, stretching up to the Gulf. This was a major deterrent which prevented further escalation of the Kargil conflict. In the meantime, the Indian artillery, in support of the infantry, fired round the clock to keep the enemy heads down. At altitudes where walking is not so easy without adequate brakes, fighting is exceptionally difficult to comprehend. However, it was this infantry soldier, with a silent prayer on his lips and victory at his feet, that ensured the Indian Army remains committed to that driving force, ISA. Names. Countering aggression thrust upon us, more than 400 Indian soldiers laid down their lives, while many more wounded. Even at the best of times, war is a dirty business. In this scenario, there are men fought the enemy on his terms, on terrain of his choosing. Indian armed forces prevailed yet again.
Right, sir? Now, before we get on to the operations proper, rather launching through operations, let's start at the very beginning. What drew you to uniform, and how is it that you landed up in the National Defence Academy? Was there anything motivating you? Of course, events like Kargil hadn't happened that one could have got motivated by that.
Yeah, I'm basically from an army family. My father was in the army, and my elder brother also decided to join the army. And my father was posted in Pune at that time. So NDA was very accessible to all of us. It was just about 14-20 miles from Pune. And that was the motivation. When my brother joined, then we used to go over the weekend to meet him. And one saw the life in the academy, and one got drawn towards that life. And well, that's how I decided to join the academy, and I did. And later on, I was fortunate to be commissioned into the 3rd Gurkha Rifles. Very valiant soldiers, the Gurkhas, and they have a history of valor and bravery in all the wars which we have fought, including the Second World War and the First World War. So that was the second motivation to join a good regiment. And the Gurkhas were an extremely great regiment, delightful to be with them, very easy to command, not so easy to command because they are a bit thick on the upper story. But nevertheless, that's good for the army. because you want people who are ready to fight rather than worry about how brainy they are. You require more muscle in this brain. So after that, held a number of appointments, and then came Kargil, and then of course the story will proceed with the story.
So you were deployed in this sector, the Kargil sector, much later. Initially, when you took over the division, you were in a counter-insurgency role. Now, many are not perhaps familiar with what a counter-insurgency role was. And as many are aware, in the late 90s, peace had prevailed in the valley. So what exactly was the division doing there prior to moving to operations?
Yeah, before I touch upon what counterinsurgency operations were at that point in time, say in the late 90s, I just want to show you this map, which will give you an idea of what really was the area which I'm talking about. Can you make it be last? Okay, done now. Stop. Okay. Can you see it? Can you see the point? Okay, now this is generally the area of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. This is the international border, the one in front. This is the international border, which of course is claimed by us, this one. And this is the line of control which we are talking about, which came into being after the 47-48 operation, and subsequently got, the name changed, and the areas which we had captured, they became a part of us in 1971. So this is really the line of control. Now here you have the Tibet border, and this is the Karakoram range, this is Srinagar, and the Kargil would be somewhere over here, and this is the area of operation which we are talking about, where this entire operation takes place. Next. This is the main river which flows from China, goes through Leh, and then again from J&K in the Batalik sector, it goes into Pakistan. This is the Jhelum river again. This is the second river which goes into Pakistan, flowing from our side. And this is the Chirag, which goes into Himachal Pradesh, J&K, Himachal Pradesh, and then again into Pakistan in the area of Akhrood, and you must have heard of Marala headwards where it crosses into Pakistan. And this, of course, the Ravi River is the Pathankot side. So these are the four main rivers, and this is the famous Karakoram range, and this is the Zaskar range over here. In between that is the Leh Valley. Now, to just give you an idea of the area which is held by Pakistan, this is what we call POK and what Pakistan calls Azad Kashmir. So this is the area which is held by them after 47. This is the area which is held by us, and this is the Aksai Chin area, which has been taken by the Chinese in 1951 when they came into Tibet and occupied this area. Now the other, this is the famous 9J NJ9842. When you see the description of the line of control, it finishes at this point called 9842. And from there, the description says it goes north to the glaciers. Now the interpretation of this is different, what we interpret it as, and what the Pakistanis think. And that's how the Siachen Glacier came into being, and that is how we went and occupied Siachen. When we felt that Pakistan is trying to grasp this and come and occupy this, preempt us in this area, we went and occupied it before they could. And this is the actual ground position line. This is 110 kilometers. This 520 kilometers is the line with the Chinese, with the China army. And then this is the area of this glacier, and this is the line of control, which is 740 kilometers.
What's that 110 kilometers?
This one?
Yes.
This is that line, the actual ground position line, which is the line in Siachen which is being held by us. Thank you. That's a summary.
Yeah, coming on to CI operations now, my division, that is 8 Mountain Division. Division, just to tell you, roughly has got about 20,000 people. That's officers and men. So we were deployed in a place. We were deployed on the way of the bypass from Srinagar to Gulmarg. That is where my headquarters was located. And the units were deployed in North Kashmir, basically to control the insurgency which had taken place at the behest of Pakistan. And the situation when I took over in 1998 had reduced considerably in our favor. And we had got good control over the insurgents, the militants or the terrorists at that point of time. And North Kashmir, the elections had been held all over the valley, and elected government of Farooq Abdullah was in the saddle. So generally the situation was not peaceful. We used to have a lot of encounters with the terrorists. To give you an example, we would be killing about 250 terrorists a year. That's in North Kashmir. So the basic issue in the counterinsurgency which we are facing is that we don't know who the enemy is. We don't know where the enemy is. And we don't even like to call them the enemy because they are supposed to be the misguided brethren of the country. They are a part of us. So, but you don't know from where he's going to spring up. They have not defined areas of responsibility. They have not defined areas from where he is likely to approach us. So it's, he can come from anywhere. Intelligence plays a very crucial and a critical role in getting the upper hand over these insurgents. And that is how, in an insurgency environment, you have to communicate with the locals. You have to have the locals accessible to you. And that's why we do a lot of civic actions in these areas to win over the hearts and minds of the local population. Now, just to give you an idea, the women at that point of time in the valley were extremely powerful in the sense that they were the ones who were controlling the household. And once they realized that some were supportive, sympathetic towards the terrorist cause, who were demanding independent valley, independence from India and Pakistan. Some were wanting to join Pakistan. But these ladies, these women were extremely influential as far as the children were concerned, as far as the husbands were concerned. And whenever they came to know that a terrorist, we came to know that a terrorist was in the village, they would come and create a sort of a blockade for the army. And they wouldn't let the army, and nobody wants to, in these sensitive areas, have any altercation with women or children. And when you're taking action, you have to be very sure that there is no collateral damage. Because innocent lives can be lost, which are lost, unfortunately. That's a part of part of the operation, part of counter-insurgency operation. But all efforts are made. You're fighting with one hand tied behind your back because you don't want to indiscriminately fire at people and kill them. So it's a very delicate situation in which one is operating. So that is where the division was deployed, and we were there. We had got good control over the insurgency. The urban areas were all cleared of the militants, and the army had been withdrawn from Srinagar and all major townships. But the rural areas were, the insurgency was still very active, and that is where we had to put our complete resources and concentration. So but like I was saying, that the situation was under control. 99, early 99, we were so sure that we had got the upper hand, that we wanted to withdraw some troops from the insurgency area to also show to the world that we were in control of J&K. And troop reduction was one of the main considerations at that point of time. And in fact, one of my brigades, which a brigade is got 3 units and about 3,500 people, they were to move to Kishtwar and Badarwar. But before this could fructify, before this could materialize, the Pakistan showed their hand in Kargil, and thereafter the operation started.
Now this was the backdrop in which 8th Mountain Division was asked to do. Now you can understand what he's talked about, the counter-insurgency operations, and at that time something was going up in the line of control. That is where Musharraf had started moving in those elements, which everybody thought, in fact, initially there was a lot of this thing that perhaps there are ragtag elements which have come in. There were a lot of lapses on ground, we will cover that later, but after some time they had occupied heights in this entire area of Kargil, etc. And then they realized that it is beyond the capability of troops which are actually on ground for a defensive purpose. That is, you are defending that area. And thereafter it was decided that you needed additional division. And that is when they decided to move 8th Mountain Div under General Puri. Now sir, you moved out from a counter-insurgency operations. Now is it, normally a person would just say that, okay, there are troops, people are trained, you are trained to fight anyway, how does it make a difference? You pick this troop from here and put him there, you should be able to fight. It's a bit about the weather changes, etc. But you are supposed to be taking all that in your stride. But what exactly goes into it? How does a division, we're talking about 50,000 plus troops, and then you're looking at all the resources. What are the aspects which actually impinge on this when you move a division right from a valley which you are deployed in the counter-insurgency and push them into an operational role, and that too in a terrain which is entirely different? If you could just touch on the parts of the terrain. And then how do you provide the logistics? Logistics is a big thing because you have to support that many troops, the other supporting elements of them. How do you support that in an area again which, if you could just cover, how easy is it? Was it that you can keep moving these elements throughout the year? So all those aspects actually impinge on finally how a division can be effective in such operations. So that is the start of it, then you moved.
It's very difficult to lift troops in an insurgency area because they are troops who are fully embedded in their task. They've got local knowledge, they've got the local intelligence which they've built up over the couple of years. So it is a very difficult decision for any leader or a military leader to take, to de-induct troops from active insurgency areas and push them for conventional tasks. So there was a certain amount of delay which had taken place. In fact, in the initial stages, I had told my boss also that, look, this area cannot be looked after by one division, and there is a requirement of pushing additional forces in that. And 8th Mountain Division is best located was the ideal formation to get inducted for this operation. But like I said, it takes time for decision making, because once you uplift troops from the counter-insurgency area, you are creating a vacuum, which can again be filled up by the terrorists. So whatever you have done over the years gets negated by this action of yours of lifting troops from there and taking them somewhere else. So the decision was taken sometime in the third week of May to induct my division from this place called Sharifabad, which I mentioned to you was on the bypass from Srinagar to Gulbarga. And we had to move over there and take over within 4 or 5 days. That is, by about 1st June, I was given the task to assume the operational responsibility of Mashko and Dras. These are the two areas which are across the Zujila Pass. Now, what does this involve? Firstly is the mindset, because like I said, you're fighting insurgency operations where there's no enemy. I mean, he can come out from anywhere. It's not a defined approach or a defined military strategy which is followed by these people. So the mindset of the soldiers, you have to make sure that you change that and tell them that now that period of service is over and now we are going into conventional operations. And conventional operations and counterinsurgency are like chalk and cheese. There's so much of a difference, because in insurgency operations, I'll give you an example like artillery. You don't use artillery against the terrorists. So the artillery is used in other tasks like helping you in the continences, helping you in reinforcing your resources for various operational tasks or for road opening in their area of responsibility. So they are also diverse from their main task for which they've been trained. So that is the first requirement. And similarly for people like the ordnance, the ones who are giving you the ammunition, the ones who are giving you the clothing, your basic, to keep you administratively fully equipped. Then the supply side, the medical side, everyone is doing different type of tasks in an insurgency area, like the medicos. The medicos have to look after the insurgents also. I mean, if you have a terrorist who's wounded, you can't say that I'll leave him to die or something like that. You have to look after that child. You have to evacuate him to a hospital perhaps. So all these issues are involved, and changing the mind of the troops is a very, very big requirement. Then you have a time, the restrictions of time, because you want to you want to get inducted into a new area, you've got a new task ahead of you, and you have to complete that task within parameters of a certain time which has been given to you. Not given to you, but you work it out in such a way that, which I'll cover later on. And then you move into these areas, the challenges are immense. You have the terrain, which is a big factor. When you're going from the plains, which are about 6,000 feet, to heights which are 18,000 feet, 20,000 feet, and you're moving the entire division on one single axis, that is the road going from Srinagar to Dras to Leh. This is a single axis. And by the time we landed up across the Zujila Pass, when I was there, that was the time when the civil traffic was also using this road to build up for the winters, for the forthcoming winters. Not only the army, but also the Leh garrison. We have to build them up. They have everything from sword upwards to artillery guns and ammunition is moved on this road. And this road was totally because of the insurgents who were dominating the whole axis. So that was the terrain, and I give you an idea of the terrain. See, this is the Mashko sector. You can see the type of terrain, the ruggedness of the terrain you can see. This is another area where a lot of blade of grass is. So what happens, breathing becomes very difficult when you're moving at high altitude. And coming from 6,000 feet, if you're going anything beyond 9,000, requires a second stage of acclimatization. So you have to acclimatize troops for a higher altitude to fight at higher altitudes. Then you see this is the type of slopes which you have, the gradients which you have to negotiate. And the soldier has to go on these slopes carrying weight of 25 to 30 kgs. So every step which you take, you require, you regain your breath after every 2 or 3 steps. And you go 2 steps up and you roll down 2 steps down because of the looseness of the earth, which you can see over here, the type of soil which is there. So the terrain itself is a killer in these areas. And accompanied by the weather, lack of water on the ground. So all this, what we were talking about logistics, the water has to be built up. We are carrying the water to make sure that people are adequately provisioned to take on their tasks. So terrain, then you have the climate, you have the heights because of the which requires advanced stages of acclimatization. You can't launch troops without acclimatizing them. This is what had happened initially. We lost a lot of soldiers because they were not properly acclimatized. So acclimatization, then you're moving them on that one single road. So all these problems are there, all these challenges are there, and then your intelligence. So by the time we took over, we were not even sure as to how the enemy had intruded to this area. It was a frontier of 130 kilometers. It was a very, very large, vast frontage. And they occupied this with about 5 to 6 battalions, which is about 4,000 people. So, and sitting on heights, they are sitting on dominating heights. And to evict them, one had to attack from lower heights and walk on the higher regions. So that itself is a big challenge, which I mentioned to you, carrying weight and your ammunition, your other maintenance stuff which you carry along with you. So it's a big
So then we'll get on to the battle proper, because now once Lt Mohinder moved on to that, we started, the battle started with Tololi, once your division moved in. So now how was it that you decided, I mean when a commander goes in there, he sees you looking at 130 kilometers, a vast frontage, just imagine 130 kilometers of this sort of a terrain. They're sitting all over all these small hilltops. What sort of a decision goes into it to decide as to what do I really need to capture? Obviously, you don't have that sort of troops where you can simultaneously take all those features, all those heights have been captured. So you have to decide that you've got to take these particular heights, and that's a very big command decision, because that will influence the rest of the battle. So you started with Tololi, and of course, then what goes into a capture of such a height? It just looks like just one small height, perhaps. But is it just that platoon sitting there which you need to clear, and if you have to, they can just advance and clear it, but it doesn't work out like that. So it really goes into it. First to decide as to what is going to actually influence the rest of these battles. And how do I decide, and how did you decide on Tololing?
Yeah, Tololing was the deepest ingress into our territory from the line of control which I was showing to you, and they have penetrated the deepest into our side in Tololing. The road, which is the national highway going from Srinagar to Leh, was under complete domination. I mean, they had observation over that road. They could physically interdict that road with with effective fire. With the result, the civil convoys, the trucks which were moving to Leh for the winter stocking, they were not allowed to pass through. The military traffic was not, could not get through that because of the domination of this toll. So we used to move over there at night, in small groups where they could, when the visibility was not there. So that's how we managed. But really to have a free flow of traffic, to have the road open and allow free access to Leh, tunneling was the feature which was creating the maximum problem. So this had to be addressed first. This had to be captured before we could proceed any further. And this is a very dominating feature. And the initial plan was to capture that. And for that, one required fresh troops coming, which my division by that time has started coming in. We had acclimatized them. I had about 10-12 days to prepare them, change their mindset, get them into a different mode of conduct for this operation. Standing operating procedures had to be again brushed up, and drills had to be brushed up. All this goes into the planning stage. The artillery has to be moved. Now, the division, we had the Bofors which were coming in, and Bofors, you must have heard of the Bofors guns, which did such a tremendous sort of work for us. We engaged the targets directly firing the Bofors guns on the belly, which just smashed the targets into pieces absolutely. Some were stone, some were just knocked off by the sheer weight and the explosiveness of this weapon. Fantastic weapon, and we used it very effectively. And the artillery played a very, very big role in helping the infantry in capturing these objectives. So that is how tunneling, I gave this task to one unit. One unit was sent on another direction in a diversion so that the enemy couldn't reinforce this place. And one unit was kept as a reserve. So about 3-4 battalions were involved in the capture of this objective. And once we captured tunneling on the 13th of June, I think, thereafter we proceeded sequentially and systematically clearing the various ridge lines till we finally captured Kargil and all these features.
So when these battles take place, it seems very simple, but when we read the book, we see features being attacked, battalions being thrown in for the attack, and then there are reversals. Now, it is not possible actually to know how those differences can be dealt with, because when you are looking at a battalion about 800 plus attacking features, of course they do it in echelons. But then you've seen a lot of casualties taking place, and somehow what you expect that it should be happening, that let's say I expect this to be cleared by so and so time, doesn't really take place. Now there would be such failures, but obviously in the book you can't go into those great details as to how exactly those failures are dealt with, because in the book then it says another battalion went in. But then what goes into handling such sort of failures? Because do you then say, okay, let's move these troops out and get the other troops, because obviously you have others as reserves. Is that how it goes about?
The first failure was, or the first warning of the attack, when we went into tunneling. Now, tunneling was a feature which had denied capture for a better part of a month. And you must, if you recollect that time, the media was full of it. Tunneling can't be captured. There are troops, there are Pakistanis on this, and they made cemented bunkers, and all sorts of stories were being written about how difficult it was to capture tunneling. And various methods have been tried, but there was no success. And then when my division came, we started this operation afresh. So when we launched this attack, we fired so heavily on tunneling the night before the attack to support this attack. And the attack went in. They captured the tunneling, the better part of tunneling had been captured by the morning. So at about 6 o'clock in the morning, I was there, and not in Dolly, but in the vicinity. So I spoke to the commanding officer. I said, "What is the situation?" He said, "I have not been able to capture the top." Tunneling had a feature which was called, whatever that feature was, 4590, was the height. He said, "Every other part of the feature has been captured, but I have not been able to capture this." Now that's it's very disheartening to hear such a thing after so much of preparation and so much of expectations of the country as well as the army that is defied capture, and so you say, "Chalo yaar, ye to lagta hai ek aur din niklega, we might not meet with this success at all." So it puts you in a bit of a quandary as to what is to be done. So I said, "Okay, you go off in for the night, for the day, and see if you can exploit a situation which you can use to your advantage." So I said, "In any case, you'll have to put in the attack afresh in that feature at night." So he said, "Okay, ठीक है, यही करेंगे." So by the time I reached my headquarters, I got a call from the brigade commander, the brigadier. He said, "Sir, tunneling has been captured." Now this commanding officer did a remarkable thing. He's no longer with us. First have died about 4 years back of a cardiac arrest. Young marathon runner, but he just had one attacks. He left the army voluntarily after the operations. So what he did was, he saw some weakening of the enemy on this top feature, and he rushed in about a platoon is about 35 people. He rushed them onto the objective and they captured him and managed to capture him. So it was a very thrilling moment for us definitely, and for the rest of the army and the country obviously, because the evening news was totally doing nothing else but covering the capture of tunneling that day. So it was a big morale booster for us, and I think that's how we paved the way for the next. Of course, there were reversals, that every operation does have a bit of a reversal, like Bhanu said, and then you have to have contingency plans to overcome those drawbacks or those setbacks. And similarly, there were setbacks, if I can talk about Tiger Hill also. Tiger Hill was, or would you like to talk a little about Tiger Hill? Again, when we attacked Tiger Hill, the message came in the morning when I was there, Tiger Hill, we captured Tiger Hill. I said, "Are you sure?" He said, "Yes." I said, "This is going to make national news if there's some gadwad in this." He said, don't worry, just go right ahead, and we captured Tiger Hill. So I told my boss, he conveyed it to the army chief, he conveyed it to the defense minister, to the prime minister. The whole chain was informed that Tiger Hill has been captured. Now 2 hours later, the brigade commander ringed me up. He said, "Sir, kuch thoda sa Maharaja rahe hai." I said, "Yeah, this is a country talking about Tiger Hill being captured, and you're saying Maharaja rahe hai." So I think better do something about it. In any case, that is where this grenadier, this Yoginder Singh, got his Paravir Chakra, where he was hit with 7 bullets, and well, that story is quite viral on the YouTube. You can see it. So that's where he got his Paravir Chakra, and he finally did capture it after some time. But these are the drawbacks, these are setbacks which you have to be prepared for. Worrisome, definitely they are at that point of time. In retrospect, I can talk about them, but at that time, the pressures are there to deal with them.
There is another aspect which really is not covered in detail elsewhere, but we now talk about the stress. pressures, constraints, and stress. Because even in the corporate job, understand the stress, you find people graying overnight. Why? Because deadlines have not been met. But the real stress is felt out here in the battlefield. So, what were the constraints? I mean, one, in fact, that is even debated with people in uniform, and that is why I want to bring that out. It seems very simplistic, but when you are talking about these sort of operations, as in being launched, the person says, why are we doing this? It is like harakiri, it is suicidal. They are firing at us. We know we are going to get killed. I mean, maybe some of them may survive, but casualties are going to be there. Why is it that we being pushed to do this? Where is the hurry? Wait on, let people build up. Where is the problem? 8 mountain divisions, the Indian Army had a lot of divisions. Why wait about the division? Let some other divisions come in. Let's get this thing plastered with Air Force, Army and all, and let's just walk over the area after it's completely plastered. Just few ragtag elements sitting on the top. Why should we kill ourselves doing this? Then the commanding officers have got a very big job because he has to tell those men, no, you've got to go and attack there. That is where the junior leadership comes in, of course, because a lot of those aspects came in where the junior leaders, the officers, young officers led from the front. That motivates, yes. What does the commanding officer do? How does he tell them, no, you have to go and attack now? Regardless of the bullets coming, but whether you want to get killed or not is not the issue. So that is one part of the stress, the constraints. What were the time constraints? Why were they being pushed to do this? What were the pressures not only on them, but even you as a GOC? What was the pressure on you that you had to deliver there? What happened if it wasn't delivered? So these are things which one wouldn't understand unless one has gone through. So,
as far as pressures are concerned, we all have pressures in life. But I must really say with a very, very open heart that I had no pressures from my seniors. The superiors, whether it was the army chief who was there every week, or whether it was the army commander or the corps commander, there were no pressures. They said, this is the job, you completed. But yes, self-imposed pressures. You want to complete a task within a given period of time. Well, any delay in completion of that task leads on to more difficult tasks later on. Say if we had not been able to evict the Pakistanis from there, the winters would have set in. They would have consolidated their gains, and in the next summer season, it would have been impossible for us to evict them. They would have, dug down properly. They would have made all the preparations, and we wouldn't have been able to evict them from there. And they would have got a large chunk of our territory, right in some areas north of the Indus River, in some areas north of the road axis of the national highway. So these pressures are self-imposed, and they were there. And but you just make sure that you don't pass it on to the subordinates. Like nobody passed it on to me, so it was my duty also to make sure that I didn't pass it on to my subordinates. So that was one aspect of the pressures. Now, the question which Vanu was talking about, people saying, why aren't you attacking? It requires a very high level of motivation of the troops. You have to be highly motivated to feel that yes, we have to do the job. We know some of us will get killed, whatever is the end result, but this has to be done. And why is it done? Because people fight for the flag of their regiment, they fight for the flag of their battalions, they fight for their own good name, so that their own name is not tarnished. When they go back home to their village, they don't want to be called cowards. Because it's a very big stigma for a Jawan to go back into a village and, people saying, kaya rahega, aaya baake ladai se. These are things which social pressures are there on everyone. So this is a very highly motivated sort of aspect. You have to ingrain the troops, you have to really more or less brainwash them into saying that come what may, this is a task which has been given to you, you have to achieve it. Despite all the difficulties, despite all the
US had fallen. And the ratio of the young officers killed to the men was the highest in any war. They normally have one officer killing to about 35 to 40 men killed. Here the ratio comes to 10 more or less. So that is the type of casualties which we have. And this is the type of leadership which these young boys display, irrespective of, whether they would survive or not. And I think this is what carries the army forward, and this is what gives confidence to the army to do the tasks which they've been given. And I won't be wrong in saying that I think this is also what integrates this country to a very large extent.
And we also had a lot of media exposure in this. In fact, all of you would have seen it was actually being beamed into your drawing room, living room, or wherever you had your TV sets. So it was as if everybody was living that moment, because there was no such war which had been fought. Of course, now, if it is there, then you will have the social media also, trolling also, I'm sure, because that's a part of it. And in that, of course, we had a very prominent journalist, Madam Barkhada, very famous. In fact, that time also the social media was doing its rounds of saying, that perhaps things were being leaked out from the front. There were such rumors floating around. And coming to journalists, most of those accounts were given from perhaps the road head itself. But we also hear of journalists which are embedded now. In fact, they are talking about training journalists so that they go in, which was done in the Western countries, go in for war. You find a lot of journalists going along with the troops. Very difficult. But if you could throw a light on that, and then we will cover after that the human interest stories which we have.
Media played a wonderful role. I think they were the ones, this was the first televised war brought to the drawing rooms and to the bedrooms of all houses. And the emotion which they created was something which is recognized by people who are fighting that war. To give you an example, anyone who got killed, the cremation of that young officer or that soldier was so well covered by the media. It just shows the type of national response which has been there to any death which has taken place in the area of the war. So I think this human stories which were passed on by the media, which were shown by the media, was remarkable. And whatever people might say, whether the Pakistanis came to know and Barkhada, whether she, by her enthusiasm, whether the Pakistanis came to know where we were and all, I don't go into that, I don't buy that story. I think she did a good piece of work, like all journalists. There was a journalist, I must tell you, a guy called Vikramjit Singh. You can see him on YouTube. He was with the Indian Express. And he was the person who went into the attacks with some of the troops. I mean, he said, I don't want to be at the back. And we gave him permission that, okay, you go ahead at your own, just make sure that you come back alive. That's all. But he allowed him to go and he went. And he's the one who narrated all these actual stories. So I really think the media did a wonderful piece of work. And they need to be, of course, we need a lot more interaction so that they also understand what are the constraints of the armed forces. And similarly, the armed forces understand what are the constraints which the media has to go through. And
had some account also of charging with those.
human interest. I must tell you a very interesting story about the media. When we were attacking Tiger Hill. Now this was not disclosed to anyone. We didn't disclose it to anyone. It was just within my own command and my boss. So we said we will not pass this on to anyone till the operation is launched. And the firing started, and suddenly the televisions were displaying, were showing the
shells firing on the artillery firing on Tiger Hill and all. And General Malik rang up my co-commander and he said, "ये क्या हो रहा है भाई? तुम कहाँ से मीडिया दिखा रहा है टाइगर हिल? हमको तो पता ही नहीं क्या हो रहा है." So obviously he rang up. He said, "ये क्या हो रहा है भाई?" I said, "क्या हो रहा है?" I was without a television at that time. So I said, "What has happened?" He said, "There's some Barka vessel moving around and she's conveying all this." So we found out that she was operating from our place. So we sent some people looking for her and we just put her in a cell and in a bunker. We said, "You spend the night over here and please don't come out." And let us carry on with our task. But that was the enthusiasm, over enthusiasm of people. It's understanding. About the human, I spoke to you about the women of J&K. I must also commend the Veer Naris, the women who lost their husbands, mothers who lost their sons, and what a commendable piece of, they've lived their life with dignity and pride. They've not gone begging for any dolls to come to them. The units have looked after them, the army has looked after them, in whatever way the army could. The corporate world has contributed a lot in looking after them. The government, in their own way, has done some projects in looking after them. But there are stories, individual stories, which stand out of how, despite the sacrifices made by their husbands or their sons, all these ladies, all these women have overtaken such handicaps and consolidated their lives and the lives of their families. There's one instance which still will come to my mind is there was a last night, Icha Singh. When we were attacking Tola Lake, he was killed in that. Rupu, you must be remembering that war widows, that lady whom I mentioned. She was, her husband got killed at the first operation which we had. He left behind 2 boys. Now, 3 years back, 4 years back, one of the boys went to NDA. She educated his boys. One of them went to NDA, the other one. And he got his commission to the same regiment as an officer, where the father had died as a soldier. And I think the second boy was also in the pipeline to join the army. And there are many others. You have Hanif, Captain Hanif, your father stays in, I think, in Delhi, in all these places. She's also done a fantastic, they've named a sector after him, Hanif sector, where he was. His father has kept up. She says, "I will not cry, because he's my son, but there's so many others who have also lost their lives." And she's come on various shows and displayed after it with great courage. Then you have Mrs. Nair. There's Captain Anuj Nair, who got his Mahavir Chakra from 17 Jan. His mother has written a book on his son. So there are such wonderful stories to go by, which are very touching, very emotional, and it speaks for the greatness of the women of the armed forces.
Two other very important aspects which go into such operations, which are not talked about much. One is obviously the communication. It seems very simple that communication should be simple out here. But imagine they even lay cables right from the base, right up to the top where the operations are going on. They have to carry the cables in the back and lay. Because sometimes if you are not in communication, can you imagine a situation where the commander is not in communication with his troops? It's the worst possible situation, because then he doesn't know exactly what is going on. And in such sort of terrain, what were the constraints of even medical evacuation? Imagine casualties taking place at that end. You just can't walk off with them. So, some light in those issues.
Communication is a big problem. In the mountains, you have screening effect, your radio sets at times don't work properly, or the batteries get discharged very soon. So you have to cater for all these shortcomings. But the best part is that when the troops move for an operation, they carry the cable along with them, and by the time the objective is captured, they are on telephone with the headquarters. So that's a remarkable feat. And so, by and large, except for an odd instance, we were in communication throughout. The medical is the biggest problem. Now, to have 527 killed and about 1100 wounded, anyone who came to the, we had a forward surgical center at a place called Bravery, which was just ahead of, between Dras and, well, about 10-15 kilometers from Zojila Pass. It's a flattish area where we had established the field surgical center. And here we had an anesthetist and a surgeon. Now, whoever landed at this place, their lives were saved. And we carried out 700 operations on life-saving operations in sub-zero temperatures. So this is the type of medical cover which was there, which was assistance. And thereafter, all those who were more serious, were evacuated to Srinagar. But the time factor has to be taken into consideration. Evacuation has, if sharp ho jaye, so we can't evacuate them by helicopter in any case. So it has to be done the next morning. I think the medical, along with the other supporting, like the ordnance, the supply corps, I mentioned about the engineers, and of course artillery did an exceptional job in making sure that victory came out.
So, as far as the artillery is concerned, sir, it was not the program of gunners, but if you could just tell us exactly what they did, because was it actually a part of the battle? Ultimately, the infantry, because it's the man on the ground who's going to actually take the ground. But to a very great extent, artillery and the Air Force part of it. Just and we have amongst us, of course, a fighter pilot who has taken part in these operations, but that will cover once you give your bit of the artillery.
Like I said, the artillery was a battle-winning factor. There's no doubt about it. Without their support, perhaps the infantry would have had larger casualties, many more casualties, and perhaps not been successful had the artillery not provided this close support. We used the Bofors gun in a very innovative way, and for anyone in uniform, you would understand that we used it in a direct firing role. It's meant for indirect fire, but we used it to knock off the enemy fortifications, and it was done most effectively. I think they performed superbly, absolutely, highly motivated, and we fired, I don't know, thousands and thousands of rounds of Bofors. Fortunately, the supply line was available and we kept getting these replenishments. Otherwise, it's very difficult to get that replenishment. We were getting it from Israel at that point in time. So, as far as the air is concerned, I think the greatest contribution of the air was that it was a very motivating factor, a very big morale booster for the people on the ground. To see your own aircraft flying over you is an experience which is really, only those who have experienced it can understand it. To have your own aircraft, and of course to have the enemy aircraft over you is a different thing. But fortunately, the enemy didn't cross over onto our side, but our Air Force, I think Air Commodore is here, Air Commodore Yadav is here.
Request, in fact, a lot of you must have interacted with Air Commodore Yadav, but not many of you may know that his son, Monish Yadav, was a fighter pilot. He was among the first who led the Mirage into the attacks. So in fact, they used the laser guided bombs. So I request now Monish to just give us a brief touch on the air aspects. Yeah, They would like to see you. There can be no better or authentic.
Was 18 billionaires under your command that time? Now, I was posted in 7th Command at Gwalior, Mirage to Kargil. Initially, Mirages were not being used by the Air Force, but I think Tiger Hill was becoming a pretty difficult task for the army to get covered because these guys were sitting on top. So that's when the Mirages were sent in because we had the laser guided bomb. On the hill, if you use the dumb bombs, which are normal conventional bombs, it becomes a big problem because they generally have a probability hit of about 50 meters. So a peak, if you miss that peak, the bomb is either going to go down the valley this side or down the valley the other side. So that's when only one LGB was used during the entire conflict, and that was the Tiger Hill, and that was fired in the two-seater. I was in the back seat, and retired Marshal Napier. He was in front seat. So the first day we went into the attack, we had a problem because the laser weapon had its sort of limitations. Clouds or smoke or dust haze, then it could not go. So we went in for the second day, and these guys were firing at us. They had stingers, these shoulder fired missiles. So we had to abort the first attack. We had to climb up. The stinger has a range of about 10,000 feet. So we climbed up, came in for the second attack, and it was a direct hit. Is there on YouTube? The attack is going on YouTube. So at about 5 kilometers, 5.8 kilometers, we dropped the weapon. We turned about 4.5 kilometers or so because we keep firing the laser. And the bomb picks up the laser. And that was there were a lot of you were at Solo Lane, at Yes. Yes. So actually when we got deployed, there was one MiG-21 which was shot down. That was Commodore Gupta. Commodore Gupta. Ahuja, sir. Commodore Ahuja. Commodore Nachiketa went to do a reconnaissance to see where he is. He also got shot down. But what we were made to understand was Commodore Ahuja was finally taken into custody by the, not the regular army, by the Mujahideen. Commodore Nachiketa was captured by a regular Pakistan army captain. So he survived. And the body was sent back to Commodore Ahuja's. It was not a good sight. So it was very demoralizing actually initially when we went there. And the fear factor was there. So, like Gen Puri mentioned also about evacuation of handling of casualties, even if he's a enemy casualty, there is a certain ethics and this thing, code of conduct which is followed by the Indian Army. People across the world don't speak about it, but they know it. It is not followed by Pakistanis. So,
after you discharge the missile, you head back to Gwalior, and what's the time
No,
from Gwalior to there and back?
no, we were not operating from Gwalior, so we were deployed for operations. So we got airborne from a place called Alampur, which is air base at Jalandhar. We did the attack and we came back. Things have changed. I came back to Alampur. Things have changed now. So the Balakot which happened, the Mirages were sent in again.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous machine. So, yes ma'am.
I just wanted to know what you do with the casualties, the Pakistani casualties. How do you do it?
Yeah, I just show you. Any other? This is just this. This is a multi-barrel.
This is the first.
This is the gun position for where we are firing the gophers. So this is the type of. These are the Pakistani days. We gave them full military honors. In fact, we.
Flag is on that also.
But what happens if they are not dead?
They are dead.
No, these are dead. But there are some who are hurt or wounded.
These are actually.
There's another war.
Bring them to your hospital.
They were taken as prisoners.
Then they become prisoners.
They are prisoners. Once they are in our custody, they are prisoners.
But treated well.
If I'm not
They
wrong,
came
sir,
to the base hospital.
if I'm not wrong, initially the Pakistani army disowned them.
Yes.
They were not accepting that they are people. Fine.
This is what I wanted to tell you. That my division alone, we buried 140 dead Pakistani in various places, where by February we took the Maulvi and we gave them full military honors, befitting soldier uniform. And this is the type of respect we showed even to the enemy. So this is like Manisha said, is something which is never talked about, but it is done by the soldiers.
The Pakistanis didn't even accept their own. Imagine.
It's very
It was
curious to
only
know what
recently that
happens.
they accepted it.
That's a war that happens.
What happened?
They were finally returned.
They stay
Then
there.
obviously then you have negotiation. Then
They do go back.
Then you return to
the Pakistanis have got a lot of our prisoners which haven't been returned.
So what do they do with them?
In fact, the skirmish which happened in 2020 with the Chinese in Taiwan, I was made to understand that they also refused to, they also abandoned, sort of, they were not accepting their death.
Yeah, they didn't accept the casualties. But anyway, one can understand that China is a closed society.
Excuse me. So is it true that you had to purchase, the Indian Army or the government had to purchase those coffins at a pretty high price? There was a lot of
It's a political act.
no, but the Pakistanis to give them a decent burial. There were many stories in the
No, but
papers about it.
these are makeshift coffins which we just still just to
where is the place?
we were not going to give them those defense minister wala
Ah.
stamp or
That's a different story altogether.
Do you have an image of the tiger is captured when it is
If you want to see the,
No, YouTube was yeah.
it's the YouTube, right?
And that was, that would be, it was a private.
He's trying to get that. Because that time, now we finished with it. The audience, anybody wants to interact with them? Any questions? Open to it.
First and foremost, I want to give a standing ovation. Honestly, there were so many unanswered questions in my mind before I came. And I thought I'm going to ask this, and then it was Pande. General Pande asking. So General Pande is superb. No, only one question, okay? But I was listening to you so gently because I said I'm not next going to ask this, and there he was. So you are very good with your questioning. General Puri, my question to you is one, that I cannot imagine the human spirit that you were able to motivate. I just can't fathom it, number one. Number two, what do you think led to the failure of our intelligence? Because basically the Pakistanis didn't come in a jiffy, right? So all this Herculean task that you did would have been avoided if we had the right intelligence, number one. And also the treacherous weather, terrain, and all kinds of challenges that you faced. What kept you physically also enduring, course, mindset will change for lots of people, but how did you do it? This is something I would like to know.
Yeah, I think, firstly, as far as the intelligence is concerned, it's not a national secret to be honest. It was a failure. Whether it was the intelligence agency, or the civil, or the military, both failed equally. Equally, they failed in performing their task, and what you very rightly said, if we had known what is going to happen, if we had foreseen it, or if we had appreciated this, perhaps it would not have come to this stage. So, I think we made events after that. The Kargil Review Committee was there, it was formed. A lot of intelligence reorganization was done with the result that today we are much better off than what we were at that point of time. But that notwithstanding, definitely we lost so many lives because of the. There is no doubt about that, and we're very happy about that. And what got us thinking and what got us motivated, despite the weather, despite terrain, like I mentioned to you, the ethos of the army is that you fight for your unit, you fight for the flag of your unit, come what may. Then you fight for your own good name. You know that what I was mentioning to you, nobody wants to go back to his village or go back to his own bravery and even the stab of now, just ran away from. Physically, you have to be mentally tough to be physically able to stand. I think it's not that you go to the gym like that.
Do we still have troops over there? Do we still
Yes,
have
of course.
Yes.
Pulwama also said,
Sorry?
we had the same intelligence, the Chinese people. They're defeating.
You see, intelligence is something which you can't guarantee all the time that it's going to hit the mark. You will have this, despite the best intelligence, you will still have gaps which will get exploited somehow or the other. You can never have a foolproof intelligence. I think now you see is there.
You see is there.
If I may just add something.
Yeah, America also. What happened in 9/11? So this
Libya, 9/11.
If I may just add to your point, while you're absolutely right, we're talking about intelligence failures, and everybody says, how did they possibly come in? Now, I've also commanded a division in the east, and in areas where hundreds of kilometers are under your area, right? You have only limited troops. And the weather, like here you're talking about minus 40 degrees plus. Now what happens is the human int means you're supposed to go there physically. You can't possibly be going all across. But yes, so they say, okay, you patrol. The patrol should go out, gather the intelligence and come in. So they do that. But invariably over a period of time, that cognizance is that there is nothing happening. In such sort of terrain, what would happen? It has to be actually supported by a lot of other factors, like whether you have the satellite images, you have a lot of technology. Technology has to come up. Of course, now you are having a lot of things. In fact, logistics are going to be moved by drones now. You're going to stop having those mules going through those terrain where it used to take ages. So these things do happen. It is not, like he said rightly, it happened in Israel where you're looking at Mossad. You can't have a better intelligence agency. The world talks about Mossad and you do have an failure there. I'm not saying that it should happen. It should never happen. But if you take the sort of a situation which obtains in the terrain which was earlier occupied by division before General Puri's division moved in, they are difficult areas, they are difficult times. There, sorties are supposed to go in, but the person who's coming in is also wise. He knows how to camouflage himself. He knows the sortie is coming in, so he will lie low at that time. Unless you are going exactly into that height which we showed, you're not going to be able to see anything. So where exactly would you go? In the terrain I'm talking about, it takes 14 days for a patrol just to reach the other end point. Those are not so easy terrain, they are not so easy areas. But that notwithstanding, when such things happen, you have a lot of review being carried out. There's a Kargil review committee which was formed. You go into those things that it should not happen tomorrow again. But having said that, when such an event takes place, then of course you're supposed to retrieve the situation, which was done, of course.
And now planes are landing in Kargil.
Yeah, how do you think it's the role of political leadership of Gen Mohinder at that time? I mean, what did they support you or were they acting in were they obstacles?
It's a good question actually. I'll tell you about the local, before I get on to political. The locals of the valley are very intelligent, highly intelligent. And they, you see, they've been fence-sitters since ages. They've gone through multiple changes as far as rulers are concerned. They've had the Afghans, they've had the Mughals, they've had the Sikhs, they've had the Dogras, they've had the, all sorts of people who have ruled over them. So they've known how to, they've learned the art of sitting in the fence. So they were, when the war started, they were very anti-India. Their local newspapers didn't speak very appreciatively of our country or of the country. So the minute the tide turned, they came in, they said nothing to beat the Indian army, so that was the change as far as the locals were concerned. The political leadership was supportive. They couldn't do anything, but they had to support.
So they were not an obstacle in any way if you wanted some.
But General, this whole ingress, as you said, happened over 150 kilometers. And it was several months of incursions that happened before the red flag was raised. I believe the first alerts were given by the local grazers, the Shia Muslim grazers. And only when they raised the red flag did the army got alerted. Would you like to say something?
Over a period of time, since 1947, this area, this 130 kilometers which was transgressed, was an area which was not important to anyone. It was vast, desert, highland, with no road communication on both sides, no strategic value targets on both sides except Pakistan, which was very deep into our area. So, as a matter of understanding between the two armies, they used to withdraw during the winter, we used to withdraw from those heights during the winters, and the day the snow started melting, we would go and deoccupy those posts, they would come and deoccupy them. So it was a mutual understanding, an informal, unofficial understanding which was there, which was conveyed. But this time, Musharraf did a masterstroke in coming and occupying this. And like was mentioned, there are procedures, there are head-down drills where it shows something don't happen. But then, after all, everyone's human, the army is human. There's a bit of complacency does set in. That 50 साल कुछ नहीं हुआ, अभी तक क्या होता है? That's sort of thing. So, I think there were these gaps which were there. And that is why they were able to come. And when they came, we were not even sure whether they are the regular army of the Pakistanis or the army terrorists. If you remember, for the better part of May, we kept saying that these are terrorists and they will be victim within 48 hours or 70 hours and so on and so forth. But finally, then the balloon went up. We found to our amazement as to what was the type of opposition which we faced.
I'm just trying to understand. When
Yeah,
the
but who detected this?
From the
Local grazers.
local grazers. We went with this God, he went over there and he saw some suspicious movement. He came and reported to the that when which army victims. Then the
This was a very specific position which were occupied. They were very thought of, these are all located on heights. And like they were directing artillery fire to target a road, basically to cut off all supplies going to Siachen. Do you know why? Are you also aware of why General Musharraf was involved in this? Are you aware of the history?
No, please tell us.
Siachen was occupied, if I'm not
Yeah,
wrong,
in
in
84.
84 by 17 Kumar.
Yeah,
17 Kumar. There was now they realize that Siachen has been occupied. Now that's an extremely important place. So there was a brigade which was tasked to take it back from the Indians. And that brigadier was Brigadier Musharraf. So it was since then that thing was there in his heart that he has to get that place. So his aim was to cut off the supply going to the army sitting in Siachen. So these were very, very thought of, and there are books which have come out by generals in the Pakistan army. He had not told even the higher echelons of his own army. There were just 2 or 3.
They said the Nawab Sahib knew of it, but he didn't know what exactly.
There were just 2 or 3 generals who, in the army also, who knew about what was going on. So as a brigadier, it's been in his.
like I mentioned, it was a brilliant plan.
Yeah.
If it had succeeded, we would have become the dumb thing. But fortunately for us, he had not thought through the plan that we become and stay with it.
And they didn't expect this reaction.
They underestimated the value of the
Exactly. Never expected that.
Actually,
And the speedy response also.
when we also went in, we had no intelligence. We had nothing. Then after some time they sent us some photographs. They said, okay, you got to target this thing. So we said, but that's a big area. So you have to give me some coordinates or some location somewhere. Something has to be given. There was no intelligence coming to us.
Recently we heard about.
Yes, yes.
I just want to know from historical point of view, when the McMahon line was drawn, there must have been heights and there must be lows. Some heights have gone to Pakistan, some have come here. Why would they make a main arterial road from Srinagar to Leh close to high points that they have not in the past looked at? Like Tiger Hill, I've been there personally, I've seen it from the ground. It's a huge hill.
Which one?
Tiger Hill. Does that belong to the Indian territory?
Yes.
It does. Then I would have thought, my thinking is that perhaps they should have had some people out there, some pillbox or some other, which they were guarding. Like this, they must be very, when going to Gondela from Siachen also, every now and then across that road, they have written, you are under watch. You are under watch. You are under watch. Because there are pillboxes belonging to the Chinese on those pillboxes. And the road coming right up to Gondela. So I would have thought that these areas would be looked at.
Miles into our territory. So, of course, 62 and things were when they came to
No,
Bombay.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about
Even now, it's impossible for him to come to Gondela now. I can say it with full confidence. Though I'm not in service in the last 18 years. But knowing how that place is, it's not possible for him to come to Sorry, these are things which happen and we should get carried away by that. But the roads which you are talking about, being close to, they are all in depth areas. Yeah? Very close. This was a different ball game. It was an aberration which took place as far as Kargil is concerned, because it's got no value targets on either side except Kargil.
To be actually managed, there's so many fields there. But if you see Tiger Hill, it's a fair distance inside LAC.
And even today, Tiger is not occupied.
Yes.
You can't possibly maintain those.
But you need to have surveillance. Someone crosses the LOC, he needs to cross it and then climb up.
exactly.
That should not happen. So I think that's being addressed.
Now that is being addressed. So you need the technology for that.
Sir, I have a rather basic question. Large number of troops from Pakistan cross the NOC, occupy the heights, build the fortifications in Kargil. Then we detected that they are there, and then the operation started. Now, what happened before it? I mean, in the process of crossing the NOC, building the fortification, etc., Pakistan must have taken a few months, I will say. I mean, during that period, we were not able to detect that such a thing is happening.
Winters, it happened.
Firstly, it happened during
So your planning is also lesser.
and secondly, it was an intelligence failure.
Very smart thing. Very smart thing.
And also, it's been admitted as an intelligence failure. If it had not been, we would have detected it. But they came over there. There were like
I have
a lot of procedures which
Sorry.
we should have done before. And the fact that
Not only that, LOC cannot be properly manned to see that troops are not crossing the border. I mean, in that particular hilly terrain, perhaps the LOC was not manned.
Sir, that is what I was saying. Both sides had a informal understanding. That you should occupy, we will not occupy. So that understanding was violated by Pakistan.
And it can't, obviously, you're right, it can't be friends, you can't have interactions on the LOC. So that is true. Unlike the international bond, that is international bond is different. Here it is a line of control. It's a line of control.
But what we have learned, that the winter page I want to suggest, was done by us only. Between winter and to vacate, our army is to vacate. And that's what we have done. Only during winter. That is where they occupy.
Correct.
So that area is not known that they occupy. All areas, they were occupied by us. And they were occupied by the Pakistanis of their side also. So they removed once the snow fell. When the opposite side we came out to us also. That's all.
Now my next question, I've been asking my son, and I've been asking my nephew, who was the corps commander then, General Kishwar, but they have not been able to answer that question. Then he said that when he went to the tiger, it was 100% kill. 100%. When he went to the tiger, there's a bomb. And you mentioned also that after the Air Force came, a lot of casualties were saved. Considering the terrain and the climbing up, they become the sitting ducks to be fighting. Why was, you should be able to tell us, why was the Air Force, because any war, we first look for air superior, and then you send the troops. And this has happened to be in our own area. Why was the Air Force inducted initially? Why have we could have, probably, you could have saved all the casualties. So I thought you should have done decision making. And the question is was the decision making.
Yes.
Why the decision taken to send the army?
Somewhere in
It's like suicide.
sometimes
When we had Air Force people, and he showed me those scripts where the firing, and you could see the guys killed and all that being destroyed. So I don't know why this decision making. I think there is, and Air Force came in later.
So I have a different sort of take on it from inputs which were given to us.
sometimes
I would say there should be no casualties.
I think the inputs which were given to us. Firstly, the Tiger Hill attack, the Air Force chief flew with us. He was on a different aircraft and he said, I'm going to go. He flew with us.
Who's the chief?
Air Chief Marshal Dibness.
Dibness.
He was flying in another two-seater. He was just behind us, about 2 to 3 miles behind us and above us, so he could see us visually when we went in for the attack. He was flying with the then commanding officer in the two-seater. So the inputs which were given to us was that there was a lot of reluctance politically to get the Air Force in because it tends to escalate things.
So I think that is the right
So-
what Manish is saying. In midway,
eventually they went.
No, but
actually they went in their own area.
No, but in the initial stage, sir, nobody expected that they could have been evicted so easily. So it is like, you're putting in a sledgehammer, but at that stage they thought the normal battalion chala jayega, it'll evict them, it must be, a few ragtag elements. It is when the reverses took place.
And the extent of ingress which happened, it took quite some time to realize actually how much has happened. The scale.
And the scale was,
I have a quick question. We recently heard about this plane landing in Kargil and was declared a momentous occasion. How would that have changed?
It landed by night.
I see.
So
by night.
It's night vision and goggles. So even
I have a plate in the transport.
So you could have used that to our advantage at that time?
land there.
Yeah, I mean, would that have changed anything?
There was no requirement for, there was no, again, in which role? For fighters, there was no requirement.
So this is only a cargo plane?
As far as, yes.
I see, got it.
I always wonder how you keep the morale of the soldiers so high. So dire situation. How do you keep that morale so high?
This is the attack which happened. So we are at about 5 kilometers. We've already released the weapons. And we are operating in the VI mode, which is also an IR pickup, infrared pickup here.
And from how far away does
So
that?
this is, yeah, so there's a lot of, so that's why a two-seater was used because the workload, it can be dropped from a single-seater also, but two-seater was used because the workload is too much.
And how far away
And
do you fire?
we were at about 5.7 kilometers when the release happened, and the closest we come is about 4.8 kilometers. But these guys, all missions we did, they knew exactly what time we are coming, where we are coming from, what altitude we are coming. They knew it.
Can you elaborate what is
So,
workload?
so I was a little mild on this thing, but we did have inputs. There's some people,
What it is?
maybe a lady who was passing information, but they knew. And when a missile comes at you, you do not see the missile coming at you. It's so fast. It's at higher speed of sound. So you will only see the plume coming at you.
What is
So
workload?
it can rattle you like nicely in the body.
Workload, how do you define the workload?
It's there are procedures, SOPs which are laid down, what the front guy is going to do. The front guy, the guy in the front, the guy in the rear cannot drop this thing because the trigger is only with the guy in the front. The guy at the back, since the trigger is with him, is the guy who's going to be handling the cursor if you saw it.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm going to point and keep it on the target and fire the laser. So the laser fires. So if you've seen the movie, Harrison Ford's movie, Clear and Present Danger, so they've shown a F-18 dropping a laser weapon. But the laser is being fired by a guy on the ground. That can also be done.
So
We don't do it.
LTN follows the laser?
So the bomb has got a laser seeker on the head. He picks up the laser reflection and he moves on.
I think we take the questions
If
now.
you see the Top Gun 2 also,
Yes.
they've used the bunker busters but laser.
I think we carry on the conversation there.
Your lunch.
For lunch. And thank you very much. I think the sitting in the comfort, warmth, listening, making it sound as if it's a PlayStation game.